Welcome back to the Illiterate Greek, and soon to be a new year. So let's take a look at Matthew 11 in the Amplified Version. Jesus said, "Come to me, all you who are weary and heavily burdened by religious rituals that provide no peace, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, following me as my disciple. For I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest. For my yoke is easy to bear, and my burden is light." So the big word there is that word rest. The Greek word anapao, G373, and it means to cause or permit one to cease from a labor and to rest to gain one's strength, to refresh or quiet down. Now, in Jesus' time, the standard practice amongst the Jews was that young men would come under the tutelage of a rabbi, and they would learn everything they could from the rabbi. So part of what they were required to do is they had to memorize large portions of scripture, which is nothing wrong with that. But what they also had to do was they had to learn the practices, the burdens, the yokes, the beliefs of those rabbis. And they had to learn them all, and then they had to be able to not only learn them, but then they had to recite them to the rabbis. So it could be a very burdensome thing, because they had to not only learn the scripture, but they had to learn what their rabbi thought the scripture said. Not just what the scripture said, but what their rabbi thought. So the young boys had a tremendous burden on them. But when it came to burdens, what did Jesus say? In Matthew 22, Jesus was asked, what was the greatest commandment? And he said, the greatest commandment is to love God with all your heart, soul, and mind, and to love your neighbor as yourself. So there's two things: love God, love your neighbor. And again, Jesus said, "For my yoke is easy, and my burden is light." Jesus wasn't going to pile rule after rule after rule after idea after principle onto his disciples, just simply to love God. So what's the point in this? Well, with the Christmas and New Year's holidays, Christmas is a wonderful, joyous time, but it can also be burdensome, because we've got to worry about family dinners and who's going to be invited to this dinner, whose house are we going to have it at. Well, if we invite Uncle Fred, he can't sit next to Aunt Jane because they don't get along very well. So there's all kinds of burdens and expectations and traditions. We always do it this way. This is what we always eat. But we need to remember that Christmas is a time of celebration, and the New Year is just that. It's New Year. It's not a time to worry about resolutions and resolving to do this, resolving to do that. Maybe if we want to make a resolution, resolve to love God more.